Joining us now, we have Jeff Hauser. He is the executive director of the Revolving Door Project, and he is here to tell us about the pharma ties with our new FDA commissioner. Let's go ahead and throw this tear sheet up on the screen. This was before he was confirmed. It says, will Biden's FDA be led by a pharma guy, Robert Califf, who's worked and lobbied for the big drug companies, looks to be the front runner for the job. He is now there in the job. And Jeff, just tell us why we should care here.
Well, Robert Califf is unfortunately Biden's head of the Food and Drug Administration. Joe Biden right now is focused on addressing inflation, reining in costs, and going after corporations. And yet he put in charge of the Food and Drug Administration somebody who has eagerly revolved between big pharma and big tech and the U.S. government. And he has brought his expertise in government to his corporate benefactors. He's made a lot of money shilling on behalf of shaky drugs, not the best drugs, and on behalf of Google's extremely dystopian move into health sciences, life sciences. So he is not somebody, I think, that we can trust to rein in the power of big pharma, to pursue the government's ability to lower drug costs, and we just can't really trust the guy.
Yeah, okay, so let's go into some of those examples here that are laid out. Give us some of the worst examples in his career and why that matters in a time of, I don't know, a global health pandemic.
Yeah, so he was involved with Johnson & Johnson, obviously one of the largest historical big pharma companies. And one of their products was a shaky drug called Xarelto, one of these made-up words that basically just means profits for big pharma. And he helped shepherd that drug to approval at the Food and Drug Administration after they had been a client of his, and he had in fact worked on that drug. He is somebody who left so he became head of the FDA in 2015 after having led a key component of the FDA. And there was serious Senate concern at the time. Joe Manchin, Ed Markey, and others who were very concerned about the opioid fight saw that Califf was somebody who was indifferent to their concerns about opioids, and one of the many people in government who has tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of deaths on their hands for having allowed the opioid pandemic to occur. And they were opposed to him back then. So he left the Food and Drug Administration when Trump became president and went to Duke, where he took a ton of money into a new program he led at Duke. And he went to Google, which was creating Verily, which is their effort to apply big data, looking into your personal life in order to presumably help life sciences. And obviously, we want big data to be applied to health concerns, but we also want to protect people's privacy. And when I think protecting people's privacy, I very much do not think Google. And so now that he is at the Food and Drug Administration, he'll not only be dealing with the ongoing COVID pandemic, but he'll also be dealing with all sorts of key issues with respect to technology, data, and health. And honestly, I just don't trust how he'll do that job.
Jeff, the counterpoint that I always see offered from people who are like, oh, this is fine, or even this is actively good, is, look, you got to have people who are experts in the field, who have worked in the public sector. How are you going to have people run these agencies that have expertise and have zero conflicts of interest? So it's a sort of like appeal to the technocracy to justify these conflicts of interest. What is your response to those?
Well, for one thing, the Food and Drug Administration has been run by, for the most part, by a series of insiders for the past several decades. So if we think that the current types of people being chosen are the best to run the FDA, then you have to look at the record and say, can we do any better? And then you have to look at, do you want a complete outsider who has no understanding of the Food and Drug Administration and no understanding of the drug development process? Obviously, that is not the case. But there are many people who have spent their lives at universities where they have retained enough autonomy in their work that they are not people who are owned by big pharma. They may have at some point interacted with big pharma. I agree, you're probably not gonna have somebody who's completely pristine. But there are many people. One who comes to mind is Dr. Joshua Sharfstein at Johns Hopkins, who has been a deputy at the Food and Drug Administration in the past, who is notorious within big pharma as somebody they can't deal with. as somebody who retains his independence. And I don't think Sharfstein is unique. There are people who have managed to retain independence, but are disliked by the traditional insiders who managed both the FDA selection process and the big pharma industry.
Yeah, and so what are the biggest decisions that are on his plate now that he's the commissioner? What's going to happen in terms of both COVID? We've got the pills, obviously, full approval. What are some of the most controversial stuff that we can point to? Because obviously, COVID's not done, and there's still a lot of big stuff to do.
Sure. I mean, for the most part, vaccines are not where the money is made in big pharma. Where the money is made are ongoing treatments for diseases that middle class and upper middle class and rich people get. And in that situation, if you look at the overall impetus of the Biden administration to try to take on COVID, take on inflation and fight higher prices, the big issues are going to be, will Biden use the executive branch's authorities under Section 1498 and under march-in rights to wrest control from big pharma of some of the key technological advances, many of which were paid for by the National Institutes of Health and other aspects of the US government, and make them more readily available at more realistic prices for both the American people and abroad. I mean, with COVID, a lot of the issues surround vaccine access outside of the United States. Obviously, the more people suffer from COVID across the planet, that is not only bad for those people, which should matter morally, but it's also, creates a potential for more variants down the line, which obviously none of us want to see happen. So on COVID, it is, will we make vaccines and treatment technology more widely available so the supply can get out there as widely as possible? And in the United States, it's going to be these efforts to take cancer drugs and digestive tract drugs, all sorts of important technologies where there are monopolies that are held by current big pharma companies. Can we share the benefits more widely? Can we rein in the monopolistic profits that are being earned by big pharma?
And Jeff, bigger picture, what sort of rules or legislation, what could be done about this problem? Because it's just not just a problem of the actual conflicts of interest. It's a problem of perception too. We have people who have so little faith in government. This is part of why, we struggled with vaccine uptake among some communities. So what sort of legislation do you and the Revolving Door Project believe would help to lessen corruption and the appearance of corruption in government?
I think the single biggest thing that we need to see is that when you leave government, there has to be a longer cooling off period where between leaving government and working with your former colleagues in government on behalf of a private sector employee. The one halfway decent thing about Caleb is, in order to get Elizabeth Warren's vote, he agreed that there'll be 4 years rather than 2 years before he deals with the FDA again once he leaves the FDA. Now, we need more stringent enforcement. There have been promises in the past, and I don't necessarily agree with Senator Warren's vote on this, but we do need to see requirements like that written into law, not just pledges by people signed. We need actual enforcement that you just can't deal with your former colleagues for several years after you leave government on behalf of a private sector employer or some think tank or business association that is effectively a private sector employer. We just need to make sure you're not in government in order to become a well-paid mercenary right after you leave government. And that's the single biggest thing we can do from a perception of ethics issue.
Yeah, well, really well done. Now people know a little bit more about the FDA commissioner, so thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. It's been a crazy week, month, whatever. It's been nuts. Look, thank you guys so much for your support. That's why we have all of our new partnerships that we announced. Kyle, Marshall, James Lee. We've got another one. Matt Stoller put out a video this weekend, an excellent, really good one about the economy. So it's really
Stuff just goes crazy.
It does so well for us.
Stoller's got his finger on the pulse.
He's got his finger. He knows the people. Look, it matters because your support enables us to support them with our infrastructure, editing the channel, give more exposure, give you guys guys more content. That's what it's all about. That's what you're helping us build, and we really appreciate it. Gearing up for the midterms, not that far away, and remember, that's all over our minds right now. So thank you all so much for the support. That's what you guys enable, and we really appreciate it.
Yep. Love you guys. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.